So in this video, we're continuing with the Indian National Congress, right? So India being a nation in the making at that point, its nationhood could not be taken for granted. The major task that the Congress faced in its initial days was to promote the feeling of nationality and to consolidate all people into one unit. The leaders of the Congress understood their purpose very clearly, as Anand Charlu put it in his presidential address to the Congress in 1891. He described Congress as a mighty nationalizer, and this, he said, was its most glorious role. W.C. Banerjee, the first president of the Congress, while defining the aims and objectives of the Congress, said that the fuller development and consolidation of sentiments of national unity was its mainstay. Two principles were adopted within the first 5 years of Congress. What are these principles? The first one, the president was to be from a region other than where the Congress was to hold its session. Second one, in 1889, a minority clause was adopted in the resolution demanding reform of legislative councils. According to the clause, wherever Parsis, Muslims, Christians, or Hindus were a minority, their number elected to the councils would not be less than their proportion in the population. Hence, regional cooperation and secularism were inherent to the Congress since its inception. The early Congress was very clear about its objectives. It was concerned with political objectives and its aspirations were limited to that. Social reforms did not form a part of the agenda of the Congress in its initial days. It was a political unit. Dadabhai Nauroji, the grand old man of India, laid the principle down in the second session of Congress. The National Congress must confine itself to questions in which the entire nation has a direct participation. Congress was, therefore, not the right place to discuss social reforms. We are met together as a political body to represent to our rulers our political aspirations. We must remember that Dadabhai Nauroji was one of the biggest and the strongest voices within the Indian National Congress. He makes it clear that it is not a social reform unit, but it is a political unit. The methodology of political struggle of early nationalist leaders included petitions, prayers, and memorials. All this led to the politicization of people, which was Congress's main aim. Many critics failed to see this end and they freely criticized Congress for having been too mellow and afraid to take on the British. Justice Ranade, the political sage, consoled the 26-year-old Gopal Krishna Gokhale when Gopal Krishna Gokhale received a two-line reply from the government to a carefully drafted memo. Gopal Krishna Gokhale had written this memo from the Pune Sarvajanik Sabha. So Ranade tells Gokhale, "You don't realize our place in the history of our country. These memorials are nominally addressed to the government. In reality, they are addressed to the people so that they may learn how to think in such matters. This work must be done for many years without expecting any other result because politics of this kind is altogether new in this land." Remember that Gopal Krishna Gokhale would go on to become one of the tallest leaders within the Indian National Congress, and his role in the Swadeshi movement could not be questioned. So Justice Ranade is one of his mentors. Integration and indigenization of political democracy was seen as one of the main objectives. Quoting Dadabhai Nauroji, the new lesson is that the kings are made for the people and not people for the kings. So this has aged so well. Even today, I think we have to take this lesson out to our political leaders, that the new lesson is that the kings are made for the people and not people for the kings. It clearly signified that the politics of the Congress was based on the doctrine of the sovereignty of the people. Referring to the preparatory nature of the Congress work from 1885 to 1905, Dadabhai wrote to Dinsha-i Vacha, "The very discontent and impatience that the Congress has evoked against itself as slow and non-progressive among the rising generations are among its best results. It is its own evolution and progress. The task is to evolve the required revolution, whether it be peaceful or violent. The character of the revolution will depend upon the wisdom or unwisdom of the British government and action of the British people. Dadabhai Naoroji was so smart and he was so wise that he predicted what would happen in the coming years in this sentence itself. So, in the midst of the Swadeshi movement, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, enlightened by all the advice he was to receive from Justice Ranade, Firozshah Mehta, Dadabhai Naoroji, R.C. Dutt, and others, went on to say what is perhaps the most profound thing that any of the early congressmen ever said. I quote Gokhale here. Let us not forget that we are at a stage of this country's progress when our achievements are bound to be small and our disappointments frequent and trying. That is the place that which it has pleased Providence to assign us in this struggle, and our responsibility is ended when we have done the work which belongs to that place. It will no doubt be given to our countrymen of future generations to serve India by their successes. We of the present generation must be content to serve her mainly by our failures. For hard though it be, out of these failures, the strength will come, which in the end will accomplish great tasks. Gokhale is prophetic with what he is saying. The early failures of Congress would lead them organizational strength that would lead to Tilak, Gokhale, Annie Besant, and later Gandhi turning the heat on the British. To sum it all up, the basic objectives of the early nationalist leaders were to lay the foundations of a secular and democratic national movement, to politicize and politically educate the people, to form the headquarters of the movement, that is, to form an all India leadership group, and to develop and propagate an anti colonial nationalist ideology. The early national work was to finally result in the mass national movements of the 20th century with Tilak, Gokhale, Gandhi, Sardar Patel at the helm. We will continue with the videos. Thank you.